We're recording late night. I'm sure those of you watching along on YouTube will notice Ethan does not look like his usual self right now. Um, Ethan, I believe I don't know exactly where you are, but I know you're at a wedding and probably enjoying yourself. But no camera for the time being. But anyway, Purdue beat Oakland tonight, 87-77. So everyone's enjoying that a little bit, although it was a little bit ugly. And yeah, I'll let you take it away from here, Ethan, on your first initial thoughts on this game.
Yeah, no camera today. Sorry to our viewers. Something wrong with my laptop here, but I'm coming at you live from a hotel in Des Moines, Iowa, as I'm preparing for a wedding tomorrow. Just got back from a rehearsal dinner, had to catch up the game on Peacock and kind of get my thoughts out here. This was not the game that I think we all wanted to see. It's kind of the last tune-up before the schedule gets real. The season gets real against Alabama in 6 days. Um, you know, we'll have some other cupcake mid-major sort of games, but these two games against Evansville and against Oakland felt almost like an extension of the exhibition season a little bit, where you know Purdue is always going to be massively favored against teams like these at home early in the season, but especially this year with so much expectation, with so much pressure on this team as the number one team in the country. The idea being that these should be easy wins and you can kind of use them as games to kind of tweak things. And I don't think the coaches, definitely Painter's not treating it that way, but maybe the players were a little bit. And that manifested in some embarrassing effort in the first half.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like especially on the glass, that was the thing that stood out to me the most is just the rebounding effort was not there. I thought guys were leaking out in transition a lot. I know I talked a lot about wanting this team to run, especially when TKR wasn't on the floor in the preseason, but I think at this point through two games, the way I see it is this team isn't I don't know if they know how to run, and I don't know if they're going to figure it out. You see too many guys leaking out when they're trying to that they never actually get to run because they're always trying to get back onto defense after giving up an offensive rebound because three guys ran down the floor. And I think, you're seeing them go into halftime and make the adjustment to not do that. And the pace slows down a little bit in the second half and the rebounding goes up. And that's why you see, Purdue out rebound Oakland by 8 in the second half. But the fact that they were ever out rebounded by Oakland by 10.5 is just a glaringly massive red flag and just honestly speaks, I think, a little bit to how they treated this game to an extent. I think there was a little bit of a lackadaisical kind of approach to this game in the beginning. I felt like before, Oakland punched us in the mouth a little bit and, gave this Purdue team a little bit of a scare. And I think they woke up and played a lot harder, especially in the second half and things looked a lot better. But yeah, I think the rebounding was just glaringly bad tonight.
Yeah, the rebounding was really bad, especially in the first half. I mean, you mentioned it. Oakland finished +2 on the boards, 39-37. They were +10 in the first half, and that included 9 offensive rebounds. Um, I want to talk a little bit more about the defense, particularly the perimeter defense, a little bit later in this recap. But just for now, Oakland was kind of getting into the paint whenever they wanted to, and either putting up a tough shot. I thought Purdue's interior defense was pretty good around the rim in this game. They're either putting up a tough shot around the rim that sometimes went down, or they were kicking it out to open shooters. And then if the shot missed, they were out hustling and out muscling Purdue's defenders for rebounds. You mentioned it. Purdue was definitely trying to run in this game. That's something we talked a little bit about against Evansville, where despite the overall slower pace of the game, um, Purdue was playing a little bit faster in transition than we've seen in previous years. And that does seem to be considered effort from this team. Guys are leaking out early, which is leading to its own issues. But the main one is that it's really harming the rebounding. It's just got this team is not a good enough rebounding team to let two or three guys just bolt down the floor when a shot goes up instead of making sure that we have the next possession.
Agreed, especially when Trey Kaufman-Renn isn't there. I know Benter's rebounding production is there, but I think this game, it was a lot more so than Evansville. This team missed Trey Kaufman-Renn's physicality and his consistency, I think, a little bit. I think, you've started to see this team's effort be affected by shots, or whether or not shots are going down, I think, a little bit. And I think that's a little bit of what happened tonight. They couldn't hit anything in the first half to open the game. And it led to some falling asleep on defense a little bit, not rebounding particularly well. And this all picked up when they started hitting shots in the second half. And I don't expect this team to not shoot well very often, because this should be one of the better shooting teams in the country. They were an awesome shooting team last year, and they should just be a better shooting team this year than they were last year. And I think they will be. But it just, the way that Trey Kaufman-Renn's physicality, he kind of brought an edge. I think they missed that tonight. And I don't think that Trey Kaufman-Renn solves all of their problems, because I don't think that he's the greatest rebounder himself. But this team badly needed physicality tonight, and I think that's where he's going to. I think that's something that's not talked about when Trey Kaufman-Renn's off the floor.
Yeah, physicality was a major issue in the first half, and whatever the coaching staff said to the team at halftime seemed to work. They scored 52 points in the second half to make the score a lot more respectable. But even besides that, the effort and intensity was just cranked up quite a bit. And that allowed them to gain some separation, to really assert themselves as more physical, more athletic, just better team, which they did not look like for most of that first half. And kind of transitioning into some player-specific takeaways from here, we should probably start with Braden. Played 37 minutes and was the team high score with 20 points on 8 of 15 shooting. He had 9 assists and 7 rebounds. So triple-double watch again for Braden. Seems to be his calling card of always being 1 or 2 rebounds and or assists short of triple-double on his good games. But this was a good Braden game. He probably should have known that he wasn't going to have 2 sort of lackluster scoring outputs in a row. He needed to score, especially in a late first half, early second half, where Purdue's offense was kind of stuck in the mud towards the end of that first half, and he really started taking over. And then start the second half, he was just assertive. He clearly came out with the intention of getting a few shots up and taking on some scoring burden for a Purdue team that, probably not talked enough about. As much as we can say Trey Kaufman-Renn, his absence shouldn't affect Purdue too much against a team like Oakland that we're that much better than. He is the primary scoring option on this team. It's a little bit like, and he's not this player, of course, but it's a little bit like Zach Edey's loss on the very rare occasions when he would either be in foul trouble or that one game I believe he had to miss as a junior, where Purdue just doesn't necessarily know where to go for their first read on offense anymore. And that's a massive adjustment. And it's resulted in a lot of 3-point attempts. Purdue shot 35 threes in this game. Shot 37%, which as a team, which is not bad by any means. Probably not as high as they would like, probably not a few more attempts than they would like, but if that's going to be your sort of low end 3-point shooting night, you're going to be a phenomenal shooting team. But on the other hand, it does leave you prone to shooting variance. And that's what happened in this first half. Purdue was 4 of 18 from 3, I believe, in the first half. And guys are just missing shots and then weren't putting in the effort on the other end of the floor.
Yeah, I saw as a good Braden game, as you talked about. Part of, I think, you mentioned that like the first read on offense with Trey Kaufman-Renn. I think part of what makes the ball screen action that they run with Braden Smith so awesome is TKR's ability is the roll man is so unique. And just that's kind of a byproduct of Clough not being quite what everyone hoped he could be, especially offensively. He just doesn't quite have the ability to run offense through him, I think, the way some people thought he might. And this team misses that. Like Braden's little pocket pass to Trey Kaufman-Renn on the short roll, you just find yourself waiting for it to happen, and it never does because Trey Kaufman-Renn isn't on the floor. But that's like the go-to offensive action they run, is that little ball screen into a short roll with the pocket pass from Braden to TKR, and then he can either go make his little 10-foot push shot or spray to shooters. And this team almost doesn't know what to run against him. And I think there were times too in this game where I found myself thinking like, oh, this would be an incredible spot for Trey Kaufman-Renn in this zone while shooters aren't making shots. Like this would be, TKR time. Guys aren't making shots, give it to Trey Kaufman-Renn. But you said it correctly. Like this team shouldn't be getting out physicaled or anything like that by Oakland just because Trey Kaufman-Renn's out on the floor. Like that shouldn't be happening. But I want to move it a little bit more positive and talk about Braden a little bit more. 27-9, just a fantastic game. Oscar Clough won Ken Pom MVP, but Braden was clearly the best player tonight. What were your kind of takeaways from his performance, as much as you can, as we already kind of know he's this good?
I thought he was assertive when he needed to be. He really took over scoring wise when he needed to. Had some ridiculous passes in this game, like that behind the back pass in the second half. There was a picture going around of it, like right when it happened. It was just a sick read. He hasn't missed a beat as a passer. And I really appreciated the rebounding burden that he took on in this game. He tied with Jack Benner for second on the team in rebounds behind Clough. They both had 7. When the team needed him to make plays, he made them. And it's felt a lot like early in the season, Braden is sort of taking a back seat and trying to get some of the guys involved, which makes sense. I think we all know that Braden is going to be one of, if not the best player in college basketball this year. But the confidence for guys like CJ Cox and Jakari Harris and Jack Benter and Liam Murphy are going to be really important over the course of the season. And we can talk about those guys in a minute in terms of what they did in this game. But Braden's been trying to get them more involved early in the season, and tonight it really was all up to him at certain points, and he stepped up when he needed to. Which, I mean, he's done in the past. There's no question about whether he or not he's going to be able to do that.
Yeah. Moving on, you mentioned Jack Benner. Pretty good night from him, I think. Another guy who I think played really well, especially for what expectations were. 11 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He had a steal tonight. He was 3 for 7 from 3. I think just kind of the A-plus Jack Benner experience, just a little bit of everything, built off of the shooting, and just an overall kind of productive night. He's rebounding well, about as well as you can expect, and I really like what we've seen from Jack Benner.
Benner's been wildly impressive in this game. Or he was wildly impressive in this game. He just has been wildly impressive in general through 2 games. We'll have to see if he's able to replicate some of this stuff against a higher level of competition. There's always the chance that, against a step up in athleticism and skill, he's a little bit less able to do what he does. But honestly, I was not expecting even this from Benter this early in his career. And to see a redshirt freshman sort of thrust into the starting lineup due to an unexpected injury absence the first week of the season on a team, the number 1 team in the country, with so many expectations and so many different players who can do all sorts of different things and all the veterans this team has, to see him just come in and just be so confident and calm in how he plays. He's never sped up outside of one maybe ambitious transition pass he tried to make that ended up flying out of bounds in this game. And he pretty much played a flawless game. I don't think there's any doubt at this point who's going to be the primary option at the 4 if TKR can't go or when he needs to come off. So, the expectation is that Trey will play next week against Alabama. We'll have that covered in the preview next week, depending on how that develops. But I still expect we'll see Benner for 10 to 12 minutes in that game, and just sort of giving a different look when he's out on the floor. Because, like you said, hit 3 threes in this game. I mean, after hitting, I believe, 3 last week as well, or last game as well, there's a lot to like with what he's done.
Yeah, I'm fact checking you, and you are correct. He is now 6 for 13 on the season from 3 point range. Shot looks good, I think, and that's always the sell with Benner is he's a shooter first, but I think that's the least surprising part of what's happening. Still good to see him shooting at such a high rate, at such a high volume, but everything else is just kind of, I didn't expect him to have like the rebounding production, the secondary playmaking. He's not a bad defender at all. I mean, he gets beat a little bit size wise inside, but I don't think he's one of the main issues with guys getting beat off the dribble or anything on the perimeter. So I've really liked what I've seen from Jack Benner. Oscar Clough, though, as I mentioned, was the Ken Pom MVP tonight. He had 14 points, 9 rebounds, a couple of assists, 4 blocks too. I thought he showed a lot of things defensively at the rim that I don't think translate against more dominant front courts and bigger front courts, but still nice to see that, because I don't think that was there last year, was that rim protection ability, especially against smaller teams. And again, just like last week or last game against Evansville, I think the rebounding really picked up in the second half, and he kind of was the same guy that we saw a lot of last year, that really physical, strong rebounder. Maybe not to quite the same extent as last year at South Dakota State, but he was still a very big positive on the glass to me in the second half, and was a large part, in my opinion, why Purdue was able to out-rebound Oakland in the second half.
I thought Clough was fantastic in this game. He was a big part of the effort issues in the first half, which we'll cover a little bit later in this recap and what that means moving forward for Purdue. But when he was locked in the second half and even towards the later parts of the first half, he just looked different, especially on offense. I thought this is by far the best Clough has looked on offense in a Purdue uniform. He was comfortable. He only took 6 shots. 5 of them went in. He knows what his role is on this team. He's a garbage man rebounder who, when he grabs one around the rim and there's only one other guy to beat, he's going to put it back up there, and he's usually going to put it down. That's what he did at South Dakota State last year. So he's going to be asked to do at Purdue this year. And he hit 4 of 5 free throws.
Very good rate from the free throw line. Very happy with that.
Very good from the free throw line. 9 rebounds in this game. Like you kind of mentioned, he probably should have had more, but he's still 1 rebound away from a double-double. He had 2 assists. He had a steal, 4 blocks. He did have 4 fouls as well. He was definitely trying to swat everything, and half the time he got it, and the other half he picked up a foul. But like I said, against more dominant, more skilled front courts, that block production probably doesn't hold up. But it's worth noting, we're probably not going to talk much about Jacobson. He only played 11 minutes in this game, only had 2 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. He had 3 blocks in those 11 minutes. That's 7 blocks in this game for Purdue, which is more than Purdue had in any game last season. So, really, even as much as we're going to take some negatives on the defensive end away from this game, the rim protection has undeniably been improved through the additions of Clough and the return of Jacobson.
Yeah, I agree. This felt like a bad perimeter defense game, not a bad interior defense game. And I think largely the front court did their job. They cleaned up about as much as you can expect those two to clean up. Like Jacobson, 3 blocks and no fouls in 12 minutes is fantastic. And if you only look at the rim protection side of things, now we can talk a little bit about Jacobson's struggles in a little bit, but I think rim protection wise, he was very much a positive, and Clough as well. Even with the 4 fouls, like he's still deterring there. Like, yeah, you're sending a guy to the free throw line, but I think his size is enough of a deterrent that it's already an improvement from last year in the rim protection department. I just think the perimeter defense lacked tonight, and whether or not that changes, I'm not sure. I'm not sure this team has the personnel to completely turn around the perimeter defense. I don't think CJ and Jakari were particularly great defensively, and I think that those two are kind of the ones that the perimeter defense is relying on, because if you have a really good kind of shutdown perimeter defender at that spot, you feel good about Braden as your second best defender in your backcourt, and then Fletcher, I think, while not being, a very good on ball defender and sure he's going to get beat off the dribble. I think he's a smart enough basketball player and a good enough defender that you can have a good defense around him and build a good defense with him in the lineup because he's not going to get beat. He's not out of position all the time. He plays hard. This isn't a problem of like, this guy is just a complete net negative on that end. He can do some things to help out on defense that aren't awful. But when CJ and Jakari aren't like the lockdown guy on the outside that they clearly weren't tonight, this team just is really going to struggle to keep opposing offenses out of the paint. And, that's a rough sign with like LeBaron Philon looming.
Yeah, the perimeter defense was awful in this game.
I think that was the single biggest negative. Maybe argue shooting, but I don't think shooting is even in that boat. I think the perimeter defense is the single worst aspect of Purdue's game tonight.
Yeah, I don't think shooting was either. I mean, rough shooting first half, great shooting second half, 37% from three. What was it overall? 47% from the floor. That's a little lower than I think Purdue will be in most games this year, but that's not like outlier bad either. That's probably like 37% from three is probably going to be what Purdue shoots in most of their off shooting nights this year. And if you're shooting 37% on an off shooting night, then you're one of the best shooting, if not the best shooting team in the country.
Yeah,
However,
sorry, go ahead.
However, perimeter defense was awful in this game. Purdue could not stop anyone from getting into the paint against Oakland. Like Oakland has a good offense, but this is a run and gun shooting offense. This is not a break you down off the dribble ISO scoring offense, and they were able to do whatever they wanted in the paint in this game. Anytime Oakland wanted to get a guy in the paint, they got two. And no one can keep anyone in front of them, even Purdue's defensive stalwarts. Jakari Harris only played 15 minutes in this game, went 0 for 6 from the floor. So, his offense wasn't there. The reason he played 15 minutes was because he was getting blown by every other possession on defense. CJ Cox only had 2 fouls somehow. Looked like he had more just watching it. Felt like he had more. He was good offensively in this game, 5 for 9 from the floor, 14 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. He was getting just absolutely torched by what was his name? Zaire Wells. He had CJ in hell. Yeah. And just whatever he wanted to do in the paint, CJ was not able to stop it. He was getting in there. He was putting up tough shots. He was drawing fouls on our bigs. He was kicking out to shooters. He was grabbing offensive rebounds. I mean, there's an argument Wells is the best player in this game. 21 points, 12 rebounds, and assists, a steal, no turnovers. He did have 4 fouls on the defensive end, but like
9 for 15 from 2-point range. Like he got whatever he wanted offensively. He dominated the glass in a way that like shouldn't happen from a 6'6" guy in the Horizon League. Like if you're Purdue, you shouldn't let that happen, I don't think. But he was fantastic tonight. I think that's part of what concerns me so much is it wasn't even like the way that I thought Oakland would have success against this Purdue team. For as much of a run and gun shooting offense that this is, they didn't even they shot 31% from 3. They didn't really hit a bunch of threes. Their best player, who's their conference player of the year, Tubru Naivalurua, 5 for 15 from the field, only had 11 points, really didn't dominate the game like I thought, he could have maybe had a lot of success. But the fact that they were able to get so much dribble penetration at pretty much every spot was kind of concerning. And I think the biggest red flag, but overall, I think it picked up a lot in the second half, and a lot of what you saw was kind of on the shooting, and it's a little bit of a red flag that the defense and the rebounding is tied to the shooting. But again, I think this team will shoot closer to the second half than they did in the first half almost every time they're out there. So I'm not particularly concerned about that. And then any closing thoughts from you as we kind of wrap this up to end out the recap?
I said on the preview for this episode, which I don't think actually aired, there was a bit of an upload error with that, so we apologize. Hopefully you're enjoying the recap here. Um, I said on the unaired preview though that if Purdue struggled rebounding in this game, I'd be officially concerned moving forward for the season. Consider me officially concerned.
Agreed.
Um, the skepticism surrounding Purdue, you and I were kind of talking off air about this right before we started recording. But the skepticism surrounding Purdue was that all the moves they made this offseason were to improve their offense when their defense was the problem. This was the seventh best offense in college basketball last year. And while there's definitely room for improvement from that, that's not to say that Painter was wrong to target some improvements on offense. This was a defense that wasn't ranked in the top 50 in college basketball last year. And that's why Purdue lost so many games down the stretch in the Big Ten, got blown out a couple times early in the season, and just generally just wasn't a national title contender last year. We were barely a Big Ten contender by the time that season wrapped up. So to come into this new season with basically the same defensive lineup and the hopes that a better rebounder at the 5 is going to magically fix all the defensive woes. There were some that were understandably skeptical of that, and through 2 games, it seems they were right. We'll see what Purdue's defense looks like against a high major team in Alabama. You know, if Purdue plays with better effort throughout the Oakland game, does it look better? Maybe a little bit. So it certainly looks better from a rebounding standpoint. I don't think the perimeter defense was an effort issue, at least not in the second half. So consider me concerned. I don't think this means Purdue can't win a national title this year. I don't think this means Purdue is not a top 5 team, but we're seeing a couple teams around the country and a couple teams in the Big Ten specifically are looking really, really good right now in a way that Purdue just isn't. And I think we all came into the season thinking, even if you didn't have Purdue number 1 in the country, you had them number 1 in the Big Ten. I think it's fair to question if this is the best team in the Big Ten right now.
Completely agree, especially the way that Michigan and Illinois especially have looked early. Like Illinois is just killing people right now, and they have injury problems. They aren't even all the way healthy. Tomislav Ivicic, who's their projected best player, didn't even play tonight, and they still had an awesome game. So, yeah, I think your kind of talk about the offense-defense splits is just reiterated by the numbers. Like this team is the best offense in the sport again per Ken Palm. They're ranked first in the country offensively, and like by a pretty good margin in that category too. Like it's not particularly close on the offensive side of the ball, but they're 46th nationally defensively. They're the only the next worst team in the top 10 defensively is Arizona at 21st, and Arizona at 21st is the worst on both either the offensive or the defensive end of the ball in the top 10 on Ken Palm. So I think it's fair to really question this defense at this point. And I'm not sure what the fix is, but I'm sure we'll see some different changes in the coming weeks. I'm really interested to see what happens in this Alabama game, but it is almost 1:30, so we are unfortunately going to have to wrap this up. As much as I would love to keep talking about Purdue basketball, so thanks for listening, everyone. We will have a Alabama preview up sometime early next week, probably, as well as kind of a full episode as well. So thanks for listening, everyone, and let's have some positive vibes. This team's 2-0, hasn't had a game within single digits yet. So let's keep the positive vibes going. Have Alabama on Thursday. So big game coming. Maybe a win in football against Ohio State. I don't know. Maybe I'm not lucky enough for that. But thanks for listening, everyone, and we will see you later.